Welcome to the Beyond the Deal podcast. I'm your host, Michael Wagman, and I am obsessed with personal growth and success. In this podcast, I interview extremely successful people, and sure, we're going to talk about deals, we're going to talk about numbers, but we also want to go deeper than that, and we want to get to the habits, the tips, the tricks, the things that lead to success in life and business. So let's get right into it. Do you have any sort of potential future economic outlook? I mean, no, Texas has a very large net migration still to this day, but like when you're thinking about what kind of market is the landlord friendly thing, the main crux of what you're looking for, or what are some other kind of economic drivers or deciding factors that you might consider in where you would buy an asset?
Yeah. So now we're getting into the nuance of it a little bit more, right? So an increasing population is always something that you have to have in any area that you're going into. Even if it's a major metropolitan area, if everybody's exiting that area, that means that you're going to have less buyers, you're going to have less renters. Everything is moving in the direction that's not growth. So what we look for is in the path of growth. Like if we can buy something that is like on the scale. So our most recent acquisition in Tyler, Texas, that is one of the highest growth cities in one of the highest growth states. So now you're talking about actually being inside the path of where things are moving and happening. So we look at growth. We always want growth, whether it's, population, income, all of the things. We want jobs that are moving there. We want manufacturers that are moving to that area. But we also look at crime. Crime is a huge thing. You can control what happens at your apartment complex, but you can't control what happens across the street. So we need to make sure that we're putting people in safe areas that you feel comfortable, sending your kids out to the bus stop in the morning. That's super important to us. And so we do a huge crime check on the zip code, on the city, to make sure that we're buying something that's going to be in a really safe position. That's pretty much the quick and dirty of it.
What sort of tools are you using to, besides going to the property itself and just sort of feeling it out, what sort of tools are you using to understand the crime demographic information about these places?
Yeah. So maybe unpopular opinion, but we do not go out to the property until we have an accepted LOI. What we do should be able to be done remotely for most of it. And an accepted LOI is just a letter of intent, right? Heaven forbid we have to back out because of what we find there, because things are not, up to date or relevant. But the due diligence period is the first time that we ever step foot on that property, unless we have boots on the ground in that area. But yeah, we use Google Earth quite a bit. That gives you a pretty good snapshot, usually within the last couple of years of what's going on. Obviously, to look at the apartment complex, we want to see, what does it look like from the street? Is it a relevant photo, like recent, or is it something that's dated? Oftentimes, if you just drive down the block a little bit, there's like a 5-year age gap that happens. So you can see CapEx that happened on the apartment complex sometimes. You can see if there are pitched roofs. You can see if there's any damage to the roof just through Google Earth. But my favorite part is driving around the neighborhoods surrounding your apartment complex. Are there a bunch of cars that are parked on cinder blocks? Are there a bunch of lawns that aren't mowed? I've seen like somebody had a garage door and just a blue tarp instead of a garage door, like some really like interesting things. Somebody could be having repairs done, but that's part of our due diligence. Like we mark that down and we're going to go check that house and make sure that, in the last year or two, have they got their garage repaired, or if it's just a blue tarp up. We look at crime statistics. We use 2 websites for crime. Obviously, City Data is really good. Neil Bawa really loves City Data. That's his big talking point for crime. And so we use that one to check local city crime. As a whole, where is this going? How is it looking? What's the trend from 2010 to 2023? All of that's listed on there. The other one that we look at is something called Nextbird, and Nextbird gives you a zip code breakdown. So the reason that we do that is we want to see the surrounding areas, specifically in that zip code. How does it compare to the national average? And that'll give us a further breakdown of kind of what we're looking at and what we're looking for closer to the property rather than just the city as a whole. Luckily for us, initially we bought into a indicator. So we do have that tool on our belt to be able to go and see just a quick snapshot, right, of what does the area look like from a high level as far as, breaking down A, B, C, D neighborhoods. But as a reminder, everything is a tool. A tool is only as good as you use it. And in the end, it's not going to do anything for you unless you know how to utilize that data properly.
Then just last year, I decided it was time to jump into the single family market again, which I really do enjoy. started picking up a couple properties. And then, with all the scare and tariffs and all the craziness of the last few months that people are hearing, and then with the 2 hurricanes that hit the West Coast of, was it just last year, we started to notice a really big gap in older homes that are waterfront. Many people are tearing them down and then listing them as, plots of land, but a few are being listed as either fully renovated or potential renovation. And the gap between there and new construction elite properties, meaning $7 to $25 million range, is an insane gap. And then a third part to that, we saw another gap of the price of those older single family homes on the water compared to those as little as a quarter mile away, but a significantly different elevation, flood elevation, in a normal neighborhood, so to speak. So when I saw that gap over the last few months and then saw the fear coming in, the heightened seasons are ending here in South Florida, vacation seasons, a hurricane season only a few months away from starting, tariffs and whatnot, potentially increasing building costs, resonated as people are scared. There's more waterfront property on the market in Sarasota than ever before. And I thought, what better way than to see if there's a deal out there? And I'll tell you, 3 days into looking at the numbers, we put one offer in, we negotiated heavy, and within 24 hours, we were officially under contract for a 30-day settlement for a property that is, yes, 50 years old, but for all intents and purposes, 10 years old, really well remodeled, crazy addition. It's a wonderful home that could stand the test of time, I think, for another 30 years. But we went after it for land value. I was willing to pay a 10% premium above land value because I want to use the property for something very specific over the next 2 to 3 years before we look at potentially tearing it down. So that's our current acquisition.
There's so many nuggets of gold in what you just said. Not knowing really the market you're in and choosing to join a zoning board, right? I mean, there's so much that you did to uncover this really unique opportunity that nobody else is doing. They're all running the other way. They're all scared. And you've actually managed to uncover something when everybody else is looking left, you're going right. So I hope our listeners take something away from it in that regard.
If I could, before you go, one thing I wanted to add about this property, I went after this with a very specific strategy in mind. If you have some real estate investors in here, this is a fun one and it's always done me well. Exclusivity. It takes a certain dollar amount, but it doesn't have to be top of the market dollar amount. So what I realized that by taking this property down, it was one of the lowest 3 priced waterfront single family homes that was not new construction that's on the market. The minute I took it off the market, other 2 came off the market. One, the owner decided they saw what we were doing and decided to keep it and renovate. Other one, I can't say what happened. But now I'm immediately more than $1.5 million under the next highest old single family home on the water. So exclusivity and removing bottom tier of something that's on the market, what is the next tier? Very, very rarely do you bring a whole stack down with you. Whereas if you remove the other things, you can climb up to that next number. And that's it. That's immediately what happened. I've already been offered more than 10% what I've not even paid for it yet.
Well, you haven't even closed yet. And you've already been offered 10% more. Wow. Okay. So truly a nugget of knowledge there in finding the things that other people are, maybe too lazy to figure out for themselves or too scared to do. So I hope our listenership does go and embrace that mentality.
And so boutique hotels sounds trendy, sounds intimidating. What does it mean? Does that translate to the world of maybe your average person who knows how an Airbnb works? How do you get that into a boutique hotel?
Yeah, basically in a nutshell, I like to call them commercial Airbnbs, and all it is just an asset that has the economies of scale, but it's not your flag hotel. So when you think about a commercial Airbnb or a boutique hotel, you're thinking anywhere between like 5 doors to 50 doors. I like to go a little bit bigger. I'm looking for properties that can cash flow at least $700,000, but my ideal point is at least $1 million. That way it makes sense to go to commercial. If not, you would just stay doing single family homes. So the reason I went into commercial Airbnbs or boutique hotels was I was looking for something that was more scalable, something that had the economies of scale, and that I could set an on-site team to handle it for me. Because when you have single family home, you're basically buying a job. You need to be managing those. You don't have the economies of scale to go into other markets. So you need to keep buying properties in the same code so that you can have maybe a property manager that can be going on site. Now, the good thing with boutique hotels is it gives you the freedom to now hire and have an on-site team. Now, these are also not run like your regular hotel. So you might not have all of the staff. You might choose to do self check-in and just run it kind of like an Airbnb. So you're saving a lot of those expenses and just having a higher profit.
Or I know there are some other major considerations for a boutique hotel, like you might have businesses attached, things like
Correct.
restaurants, things like gift shops, wedding venues. How do you take all that into consideration? Is it just a bonus, or is it something else that affects the bottom line as far as operations and staff? What do you do when you're looking at these kinds of opportunities?
No, so it definitely does. And we like to do a sensitivity analysis for all of our deals. We're looking at rooms revenue first as the base and making sure that the property is going to be able to cash flow enough so that we can return investor capital. So the first thing we're looking at, does this cash flow the hotel on itself? And then everything else is just the gravy on top. We'll look at weddings. So typically you can charge anywhere between 3 to 10K a wedding, and that goes directly to your bottom line. So if you're doing 10 weddings a year at 10 grand, well, that's 100K extra to your NOI. And at a 10% cap rate, that's adding $1 million more into the value of your property. So that's when this really starts getting interesting, is when you're adding all these ancillary revenue. Maybe you have food and beverage. Maybe you have so much things you can do, corporate events, corporate retreats, and all this is directly into your bottom line. Another thing that you can do, if the market permits it, is you add a resort fee, and even just $20 per stay, you can add 60 to 100K more as well in revenue. And that's also directly to your bottom line. So there's ways to just increase and force appreciation of these assets, which is something that you can't do in residential. And comparing the residential to the commercial space is that your value is tied to your income because it's a business. In residential, even if your property is cash flowing $1 million, well, you're always going to be tied to the comparable properties in the market.
Hey, really quick, I hope you're enjoying this episode. I just wanted to stop for a second and thank our sponsor, which is me. Nimble Capital Group is my boutique investment firm where we help passive investors access deals built for cash flow, equity growth, and powerful tax benefits. And if you think you've ever wanted to learn how to raise capital and become a GP yourself, I coach a select group of students each month, most of whom will raise over $500,000 within their first 60 days. So check the show notes in the description below to book a call. I'll see you there.
So I'm a RV and glamping resort developer. So we buy usually value add properties, existing RV and glamping resorts near national parks or other major destinations. We usually target ones that are not fully maximized. So they might have old websites, not even have booking software, old outdated amenities. And we just simply come in and professionalize, give everything a facelift. We put in our health and wellness package of hot tub, sauna, ice bath, co-working spaces, communal kitchens, outdoor fire pits, that sort of stuff. And make these properties much more attractive to a younger demographic, which is really growing in the outdoor hospitality space. We focus on the experience, which is what a lot of people want nowadays. And we make sure that we're near major attractions. So growing national parks like the Grand Canyon, a lot of properties in Utah, Colorado, Idaho, that sort of thing.
I know you mentioned that you have a wellness package. Can you break that down into what you're doing in these glamping parks and why that's important?
For sure. Yeah. And it's a little bit property specific because we are buying existing properties. So we do conform the amenities to fit the specific area. But we found that there's several research reports that showed a really heavy growth in market share in the millennial and Gen Z demographics in this RV space. So growing at like 4 or 5% of market share every year was this younger group. Separate, we found a really heavy focus from these younger demographics into health and wellness and experiences. It also aligns really strongly with our team and the sort of things that we're passionate about. And that I kind of like the most too is it really stands out from a lot of other properties because your traditional RV park might be geared towards an older group, but oftentimes they don't have many amenities, or their amenities are really, really basic, like a simple clubhouse, or maybe a more boring like pool or something like that. We can come in and if you can have this little spa type experience of a hot tub, a cold plunge, a sauna, maybe a deck for yoga. I mean, you could go, at least me, I go spend 2-3 hours in that, cycling through, and then go sit by the fire afterwards. We wanted to focus on community because we feel like that is something that is really missing nowadays, and something that people really will strive for is ways to connect with others. So something like a outdoor fire pit or a communal kitchen in particular, when you're traveling, say you travel solo or just with a couple like your significant other, sometimes it's more difficult to meet people if you go to a traditional hotel type setting because you have your private room and then you just walk out and that's it. Well, if you're going to go to one of our properties where there's, say, a communal kitchen, maybe you go grocery shopping and then now you're in the kitchen preparing food with other people around, and maybe you make a little extra and share it with other people, or you're just having some conversation while you're cooking. And it just creates a completely different experience. It's a lot more grounded and present and wholesome.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I did the exact same thing when I was traveling around the world for 12 months, and it can be very isolating, but I also think it is reflective of sort of American culture and American values, because in other places, it's much more common to just interact with strangers all the time. In America, on any given day, people might go to the grocery store and the gym and then home, and that's it, right? And you have no reason to talk to other people. And now, post-pandemic, everybody's working from home too, and you might not even socialize with your coworkers anymore. So I really love that. I think that community is really the secret sauce of health that is so missing in our society. And I love that you're trying to contribute to improving that. And I can personally vouch that the community kitchen things works. I know I did that a lot when I was staying in Brazil. We were staying in a place that had one, and we met a lot of people that way. So very, very cool. I love everything about that. So what are your most important, right out the gate, you take over an asset, these are the things that I need to get fixed very quickly? And then maybe after that, let's get into some of the sort of smaller things that really make a difference.
Okay. Well, we always have the philosophy from complex to community, which is a very specific way to run an asset. And so the whole idea is people living there now, typically when we purchase it, it's distressed, which means the owner hasn't really been paying attention to maintenance, maybe even not being paying attention to renewals or people that are moving out. And so we have an opportunity with some vacancy that we can upgrade units, make them to a premium, be able to raise the rents some. But what we really want is we want people to feel like where they live is home. And it affects your bottom dollar. I call it the 3 R's, because we have our renewal rate, our percentage is very high. We do activities every month at our properties. In fact, we do 2. We do one that is a pay on time incentive. So that basically encourages people to pay on time, whatever the due date is. And sometimes it's very simple pay on time, like a pizza party, or it might be a $25 gift card. You get entered into a drawing to get this gift card. Sometimes they're significant. One of the ones that we did that was significant was we did backpacks with school supplies. If you think about it, when you have this community and school's getting ready to start, it's expensive. Starting up, getting all those things, and every kid wants a new backpack. No one wants to go with the one from last year. So what we did is we offered that as a pay on time incentive. We didn't want residents to have to choose between, do I get my kid a backpack and the things that they need for school, or do I pay my rent? We wanted to take that off the table. And so we had that if they paid on time, they were able to come in, get the backpack. We did 60 backpacks. I mean, Think about that, and it was over 4 communities, because we have 4 communities that are pretty close together in one town. So we did it across all 4 communities. That incentive really did work. Pizza and pay, not always, but that was one that definitely worked. And then we do an event every month. And what we are wanting is our residents to know each other, because what that does is that helps us with renewals. That's the first R. People love where they live. We have maintenances to be done within 24 hours. If it's not done within 24 hours, it's because we need a part or I need an explanation. So, it's just one of those things. We just take care of it. So our maintenance is frequently taken care of. If you're getting a renewal letter and they're going to raise your rent, and you're sitting on the couch and you hear your kitchen faucet dripping, you're like, I don't know if I want to sign this. This drives me crazy. I can't stand that faucet. So we want to take that out of there. There's no choice on that. Maintenance is taken care of. They know that we have got them covered. So that helps us with renewals. The other R is referrals, because people will run promos and we'll say, pick your neighbor. Like, that's the name of the promo, pick your neighbor. And so when we have these community events, whether it's a big pool party or a movie night or a Super Bowl party, we tell them, invite your friends. And so we know we're going to have residents and their friends because we want them to see, hey, this is a great place to live. These are the things that we do. And it really helps encourage people if they're thinking about moving. They've already been to our community. They've already seen our amenities. They've already seen our floor plan because their friends live there. So that's the second R. And then the third R is just returns. The returns that we get, our NOI is higher, our cash flow is higher because we're constantly being able to fill the units. People are renewing. It's just the whole community itself moves. And then we also want to make the property an economic driver in that community. So we buy everything local if we can. So we hire local landscapers. When we do a big pool party at Memorial Day. That's when the pool opens. So it's an official opening. Everyone knows the pool is open. But it's also, if you think about it, it's graduation, high school graduation. And so whatever high school that property is in, we go to a local bakery and we have them make a cake in the colors of that high school that just says, congratulations, seniors. And we have that cake at the pool party. And if you think about it, there are probably some people that don't get any kind of celebration when they graduate. So at least they know that we're excited for them, that they have graduated, and that we're recognizing them, that they've accomplished this. So we try really hard to be involved, not only with them, but have the community itself, the apartment, involved in the community. So
that's fantastic. I mean, what I'm hearing a lot of is putting yourselves in the shoes of the tenant and thinking about the tenant experience, right? Because I think a lot of landlords, they're detached. It's not personal to them. It's, why isn't this full? Why aren't they paying their rent on time? But you're not thinking about, what is it about your property that actually makes them want to stay? How do I create this sense of community that makes them not want to leave? Because moving sucks. Anybody who's ever moved knows that moving sucks,
yes.
Right? And so, yeah, at the end of the year, at the end of the lease, maybe they have an option where it's like, you can stay, but your rent's going to be $20 more for the following year a month, right? And that's fine. Most people are happy to take that if they like the community that they live in, if they feel a sense of community, if they feel like they know their neighbors, if they feel they're safe. I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but one of our favorite little asset management tips is that we like to paint murals on all of our properties. And so, yeah, you can take that one to the bank. It's everybody wants an Instagrammable moment these days, right? So a lot of times it's like the angel wings behind them or something like that, hashtag at whatever the property is on their Instagram page, and little things like that go a long way. So that's my little asset management tip.
Most new capital raisers, Mike, they don't know the best thing to do is put your arm out for the first session or 2 meetups or whatever, and just keep reminding yourself and keep telling that other person, right now, Mike, I just really don't have an opportunity that I can openly share with you, and just come up with some bullshit reason. Either you got a bunch of investors that you give right of first refusal to, or, you're working with some family and friend relationships, or you like to give people before those new folks the right to make a decision, whatever the reason is. But at some point, after you've invested some real quality time with that person, just say, hey, I keep a list of people on my desk that have expressed interest. Would you like me to add you to that list so I can call you back at some point in the future on a project that I think you can get really excited about? And when they say yes, it shifts the whole dynamic around, because now you're not chasing them. Now you're not selling them. It's like, Michael, I'm calling you because damn, you asked me to, buddy, And that's how you use some psychology in the sales process. Anybody that doesn't think raising money is sale is wrong. But even better, if you understand some human nature and you've done some studying on the sales process, and you understand some techniques that people might use, like the takeaway close, right? Where you take the opportunity to invest with you off the table, and now that person is selling you on why they're a great fit, trying to justify, well, what do you mean I'm not qualified to invest? And all of a sudden they get kind of abrasive and defensive, and you're like, oh, I guess you are. Go ahead and get your checkbook and let's get you signed up today. But here's the funny thing, and I love sharing this story. A lot of times as capital raisers, we have to realize we're talking to some very wealthy, very powerful people. They all have egos, right? Just like we all do. And a lot of times I believe the new capital raiser is somewhat intimidated, and they get nervous and they get apprehensive about, talking to someone that might be worth $10-20 million or whatever that amount of money is. And I always say, look, you've got to talk to them as an equal. The second they perceive you're below them, your chances of getting them to open their checkbook is slim to non-existent. And I remember, this goes back many years, there was this one doctor that was a retired neurosurgeon. Guy flew out on his private Learjet, so I knew he had lots of money. And for whatever reason, he just would not invest. I think the scary thing for him, Mike, was the realistic likelihood that, we could drill and end up drilling a dry hole where he loses the entire investment, outside of the tax benefits. And so I kind of use the analogy. Imagine climbing up the diving board to the high dive at the neighborhood high dive for the very first time in your life, and you climb out to the edge of the diving board and you're like, whoa, all you need is that little nudge. So that one night I had come back into the office because he's out in California and I must have had too many beers with my pizza. And I just said, Dr. Schnack, it takes two things to invest in an oil well. He said, what? Big balls and lots of money. Which of the two don't you have? And there was a pause and it seemed like forever. Brad, tell me again, how much are 3 units in your drilling program? I said, Dr. Schnack, go get your checkbook. Welcome aboard. And he became one of my best investors ever. But imagine a little 25-year-old kid saying to, some guy probably in his mid-late 40s worth millions of dollars, that it worked. And I literally rang the bell, got my entire sales team together, gave them all permission to use that close. And I said, you can use that close. And if anybody calls me as the founder and CEO and said, your salesperson got a little impolite, I'm just going to back you up and say he was absolutely right. It does take those two things. Yeah, but sometimes, you have to bring closure to a process. The person is hesitant to make a decision. And it's just all about taking an action and making a decision. And, that's really what we're here to do with people, because the analogy I provide is I've got a great investment here that can help do something good for you with your money. Maybe you're looking to put your kids through college in 4 to 6 years. Maybe you're trying to buy a second home for your family as vacation property. Everybody has a desire and a need for their capital to be doing something. And the better we can find out what that is and solve their money problems, the easier it is to raise capital.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Deal. I hope you got some valuable insights that you can apply to your own investing journey. Now, if you've enjoyed this conversation, do me a favor, hit that follow button, leave a review, and share this episode with somebody who you think could benefit from it. It really helps the show grow and bring on even more incredible guests. If you want to go deeper, make sure to follow me on your socials. You can find the links in the show notes in the description below. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Until then, keep going beyond the deal.